hot pepper mustard, perfect on so many things, and it's super simple to make, and we're gonna can it today, and you're gonna see why not just me, but so many of you love it. Let's make it. To start, we want to work with hot peppers, which means you want safety first. I've done it without gloves. You will regret it if you touch your eye or anything else. They will scream all night sometimes from the heat. Wear this. Now, I am using Hungarian hot peppers. If you don't want this as hot because you're a little averse to spice, but you should try it once with, then you could use a sweet banana pepper that doesn't have the heat quite. I like it hot, and this is hot pepper mustard, that's the point. So these are Hungarian hot peppers, and I've let just a couple turn red because all peppers, as we know in the garden, they start usually a hue of green and they ripen to a different color. I like a couple red, just a couple, and it's all for vanity's sake. It's just for color in there when it's done. Now what I'm doing is I'm cutting off the stem end, and then I cut it in half lengthwise, which is kind of hard to see, but there you go. And then I'm opening it up, and I don't take them all out, but Mom and I usually take out the majority of the seeds. And again, that's more of a texture thing. If you leave all the seeds in there, once they're ground up and once it's actually canned, it has a little bit of those seeds don't break down too well. So you'll still have the heat, don't worry. But I take out a good majority of them. Now, sometimes for control, and I like a good level of heat, I will throw in one habanero. These ripen to a nice orangey color, but it's a little early for them to do that yet, so they're still green. This habanero, just one, in a whole batch of this, will get it to a level that I'm like, oh, it's hot, and I like it. So that's what I do, but otherwise just stick with the Hungarian hot banana or whatever you're gonna use. So in here I have the first batch of them, and I use a food processor because that makes it super simple, easy cleanup. Otherwise you could use a food grinder or something like that, but this is super easy. I'm gonna take off one glove that I can touch this with and not get it contaminated. I'm gonna put this on and just pulse it until they're ground up. So you can see a food processor, it just makes it so easy. You don't have to do any of the hard work. It does it for you, and it grinds them into nice, even-sized pieces. And see that little bit of red? It makes a difference, it makes it pretty. So I have my measuring cup that I'm checking the amount of peppers I have in my kettle I'm gonna cook this in. That way if I have any fall out, I don't have to pick it up and it just falls out into the actual pan, which is what I want. So it's always a little bit of guesswork here when you're going to do all your peppers and preparing them. So if you have a few extra, you could just freeze them and have a little baggie of hot peppers. I roughly usually know that 2 of my food processor fulls will give me enough. So that's how I rate it. So once I have it measured out, you then just dump it right in your big kettle. You use a big saucepan, a stock pot. I'm using a stock pot, and to me that just works super well. So I'm putting that right in there, and I always, when I'm canning or gonna cook anything, I make sure to have a heavy bottomed kettle, which just means a good quality one that has some weight to it. That way the heat is distributed evenly and you don't get hot spots on it. I'm taking off the gloves, they're off. Now we have all the peppers in there. It's a lot, isn't it? This is hot pepper mustard. And this is where all the unique things start coming into play and kind of making it what it is. So to start, we're gonna do vinegar. Anything with a high ratio of vinegar that's like a pickle, a pickling liquid with vinegar, makes it really easy and safe to can in that you can just water bath it, and that's what I like about it. So we're putting this in, so you can already tell it's gonna be this unique, not pickled flavor, but it really will be enhanced with that. Then we're gonna take prepared mustard. This is prepared yellow mustard. You're probably thinking, Caleb, you're out of your mind. So a lot of you have seen this recipe before. I've posted videos on it before, but it is one of those things that shockingly so many of you love, because if you try this, it's addicting. You'll find so many ways to use it, and that's the best part of it. You do add a little bit of sugar. The thing is, when you're doing canning like this isn't fermented preservation, like when you put something in a salt brine and it actually, becomes fermented like certain pickles and things. This is something we're pickling, and we want to balance the flavors out. So that's what we do with sugar. That's what we do with things, is it's a play on balancing everything out. So we have the hot, and we want to balance it. Now we need the salt, and salt is super important. It enhances flavor and it brings it out. Now I'm using kosher salt. So kosher salt measures larger. For the recipe, I usually use canning salt, which measures differently. So you have to know what kind of salt you're using to know what you need to put in. So now I'm just gonna stir this together, and we're bringing it together just to make sure it all becomes one. So once it's all stirred together, it kind of looks like a mustard, but it's gonna be a hot pepper mustard, which honestly, you can tell I like those type of peppers for the color. I think it's the most pleasant. It gives you a nice mustard color. You can use whatever hot pepper you want, just know it will change the color of the dish in the end. Now, I do have some Clear Jel here and some water that later on we're gonna thicken it with to the right consistency. The USDA always recommends that you only can with Clear Jel when you want to thicken something, not flour, not cornstarch. So I always follow the USDA canning guides. So you can look at those online, adjust for your altitude, whatever you need. And that's why I use Clear Jel. So here I have it all stirred together. Now we're gonna bring it over and we're gonna let it come to a boil and then let it simmer for a while. We wanna start cooking all this together. And you can see that what I have here is my water bath is pretty much ready to go. It's boiling. I like to have everything ready. My jars are sterilized and cleaned. So now we can just focus on what we're doing. So we're gonna bring this to a boil, let it cook, then eventually we'll thicken it and it'll be ready to go. So this has been boiling and I've been stirring it every so often, and it only takes a few minutes to do that, but you just wanna make sure, it slightly cooks the peppers. They're gonna cook more in the water bath. But while it's boiling and still that hot, we're gonna make a quick slurry, and it's not gonna be with cornstarch, it's gonna be with Clear Jel, which looks and acts just the same when you're doing this. So I have a little bit of water. I'm gonna put that right in there, and it's kind of that powdery, puffy thing. So it just goes down to a water. You see how it just is so liquidy? You wanna just quick whisk it to make sure it's all dissolved. If you just dump it in hot to the liquid itself, it can get clumpy and lumpy. You don't wanna do that. You make a quick slurry like this, and then we're just gonna use a whisk. We're gonna be stirring it like this. So again, it doesn't clump or lump anywhere in there. And once it's all in there, you can see it already, it tightened up, which I mean, you can tell it's just now this nice viscous, and that's exactly what you want. So what I am gonna do though, is I just wanna make sure that it boils all the way through again, so all of that Clear Jel is activated. So we're gonna turn it back on, put on medium heat, let it simmer for, a couple minutes just to make sure, and then we're gonna put it into jars. So I had it boiling again. Now, when you put it back on the stove for that minute or two, constantly be stirring it, not too high of heat, because now that it's thickened, when something bubbles on the stove, it splatters out and it can burn you so quickly. I have scars from years ago, I promise you. It happens. So you want to continually be whisking it while it's back on there, heating through. It doesn't take long. So now it's done, and we're just gonna fill the jars. So I've sterilized and cleaned jars. Always follow manufacturer instructions for doing that in the USDA guidelines. Now I'm gonna just start pouring this right into the jars, because this is now where you wanna make sure it's somewhat clean. We can clean up the jars after, but that's why a funnel really helps, because it keeps things really clean. Now, why I started with the last one, I have no idea. So I'm gonna move, you guys can't see anything when it's back here by me. So I'm gonna move this funnel up here so you can see what I'm doing. But I like to have a nice big ladle. It just, to me, makes it easier. You can also use a measuring cup that has maybe a spout on it, whatever works for you. And now we're just filling each one. And we're gonna leave about 1/4 to 1/2 inch of headspace at the top. So that's that little bit of space at the top between the top rim of the jar and where the liquid or whatever you're canning sits. And that's important because you need a little bit of air above to create that airtight seal. So that's what's important. That's what at the end of it gets sucked out. When you hear the little ding of the canning lid, it's that air right on top. So I'm gonna finish cleaning these and then putting them all in the jars, and we'll be ready to go. Have them almost all ready to go. So what I do is once they're all filled, I take a paper towel, put it in some hot water, just that's clean, and wipe it off, because you wanna make sure there's no contaminants on the top, because that could cause something that doesn't have a good seal. Then you wanna put on your lids prepared to the box instructions, manufacturer instructions, put on your ring. Now I save these year to year and just buy the flats in a little box. So sometimes these might look a little bit not brand new, but they work. And then you tighten it on to fingertip tightness, which means you can probably jam it on tighter, but it would take some extra effort. You just wanna go till you don't do that, because that can cause it, if it's too tight, to buckle in the water bath. So now we're gonna take these all over. That's why I do it always on a baking sheet with a rack. Any drips get caught, but then also it's easy to transfer over to my water bath canner. Now this is fitted with a rack in the bottom. You always wanna make sure. Some canners come with one that goes inside of it. Others, like mine, has one just in the bottom that I put down there, because you wanna lift the jars off the bottom. Otherwise, it could be too close to the heat. They could burst. You don't want that. So now I'm gonna put these in the water bath, one by one. And you wanna make sure once they're in there, that they're gonna be covered by the water. Now there are different ones, different types of water baths. Some people use steam canners. Use what you use and what you follow USDA guidelines, and use what you're comfortable with. So I'm putting these in, and there's just a nice amount on this batch, which I like. And this last one puts it just over the top. Now, little tip sometimes, if you don't have enough water in there, I always have a kettle of hot water ready, that if you need to, you can just add some hot water to it to make sure they're covered. Just one of those things, that way you don't have to wait for it all to reheat again. So I'm gonna bring this back to a boil, then we'll start timing it. These have finished water bathing, so I turned it off, and I've been just taking them out with a jar lifter. It's obviously extremely hot, so you wanna be careful. and put them right onto a rack. Again, I just do the rack because it's easier to transport for me, and I just think it makes it kind of slick and you don't have to do much. So you can see now they're done, but you want to let them set for 24 hours. And here soon, within the hour usually, they should all pop and go down. So when it's sealed, they kind of make an indent and they're more flat. There's a little bit above. This one is a little bit above still, and you can tell sometimes they seal in there, like this one I think already sealed. But they start drawing in, and then you'll hear a little pop, and they're sealed, and that's the best part. But then let them sit there for 24 hours just to make sure that everything settles and cools off completely. The next day, then you want to remove the rings. And I always get a lot of questions on that. Why do you remove the rings? We see pictures with them on. They look better with them on. You want to remove the ring and double check to make sure it's not a false seal, that the ring itself isn't just keeping the lid on, but it's not really sealed. So you remove the lid after 24 hours, remove the ring after 24 hours, then just check to make sure that lid is sealed. And if it is, you can store it in your pantry, you're good to go. So this is one, I probably did this one actually last year. It's open in my fridge right now. And you can see it's just this nice, beautiful, spreadable mustard, whatever you want to use it for. So I love this with chips and salsa if I'm doing like a Tex-Mex salad or something. I love this. Sounds weird, but trust me. I even love like dipping different meats into it. I love it sometimes with pizza. That's a weird one, but my dad did that. He loved that. You can find a lot of uses for it. And I'm surprised when I look back at the past videos I've done on this, the comments of people that love it and find their own use for it. That's what this is. And I'll taste a little bit. So it has like a slight pickly sweetness, but then you get a nice heat from it. And I find too, as it sits, like if you taste it directly after it's cooking, sometimes it's like, whoa, that's hot. As it sits, it kind of tempers slightly, and it's not near as hot as you think. So you're gonna have to play around depending on your heat level and what peppers you're using. I'm hearing little pops and I'm seeing them inverting down, which is the best feeling ever. So what do I hope you do with this? I hope you try something new, and I more so hope you share this video around so everyone can see that canning isn't scary. It's doable. If I can do it, anybody can do it. And you might find something you really enjoy. What great Christmas gifts. Gifts for friends, whatever it is, just for yourself. This is fun and this is delicious. So share it around. Check my website, wiseguy.com, for this recipe and all my other recipes. They're all on there. And until next time, try something new. Have fun doing it. That's the point.